January 16th, 2019. This is Everyday Truth. This is one of the most annoying things right here, these white Apple iPhone issued earphones that I see on videos. But due to my recent string of technical snafus related to audio, I am caving to this because I'm thinking that it's going to tell me in my ears whether it's recording or not. I'm not even sure. Um, so some of you are super annoyed that I don't get more technically advanced, and others of you find it endearing. So I'm aware of that. My big story of the day, I guess there's two, because I'm really starting to settle into this learning, the next phase of learning for me, which is learning how to do something a little bit each day. I think that's written on that's my newest. See that? Do a little bit each day. That's my newest reminder to myself that somehow in adult life, I've gotten very attached to doing things that are very dramatic, big, and permanent because it's somehow, I don't know, beneath me to do small things, which is a really embarrassing thing to admit, but true. So chipping away at my writing, I mean, I've really learned a lot by the way that the writing has gone for my solo show. It's not like sitting down to write a novel where I'm slaving over every word. It's like somehow keeping alive that connection to the story, and then showing up in that space that I've talked about several times where something happens live for me in improvisation in front of an audience. And then writing happens. And I really would love to have that process be different where I can do more on my own, but somehow my soul is saying, guess what? This is the way it's happening. So you have to do this in community. And what Charlie said last night was really great. One of the things he says so many things that are great. One of the great things he said last night was to have an artistic emergency plan, which is like he said was inspired by when his kids went to public school and they would, have this parents have an emergency plan for each child. Like, who do we call first? Who do we call second in the case of an emergency? And he recommends as an artist or anybody in a creative process to have an artistic emergency plan where you have people where in certain situations when you're struggling with a specific kind of work, there's specific people that you go to. And this is a really great exercise to kind of go through the inventory of people in your life and to say, who do I know that would really get what I'm working on right now or get this particular issue? And then who do I know I am not going to even tell them that I'm working on this right now? And who do I know who has, been in a similar place, gotten through, or, all these things. It's so good to have this list of emergency numbers to call and a list of people like, remember, don't mention it to this person because they're a dream killer. These are all such important things that are all part of the creative process, not just sitting in a room and doing your homework. And that, I think, is the biggest difference between being a good student in a school system, a traditional school system, versus being in any creative process where it's about consistent efforts accumulated over time that suddenly arrange themselves into something bigger that we call finished work. What I love is the observation in myself that because of all of my dedication to improvisation, not improv comedy training. I haven't done that yet. Someday I will. I actually dream of doing that someday in New York or LA or Chicago. But through music improvisation and then all of these creative teachers that I've been drawn to and the contrast between those teachers and the ones that I'm not drawn to, I have really become two things. One is really trusting of a process where I'm throwing everything out there. Um, like they call it the cutting room floor, like the documentary film ratio of like capturing footage that you capture a lot more, 10 to 1 maybe ratio of you capture 10 times as much footage as you actually use in the final, as an example. I don't know what the real number is for people. It's different in every case. But like that ratio, just generating a lot of material. And then in the course of the filming for documentary filmmakers, they discover stories and things pop up. Surprises happen, the story changes, everything gets rearranged. And so it's not just documentary films that applies to. It can be really any creative process. And because speech and the body and that language for me is so dynamic, that I've freed it up so much and I've accessed this place that's just bursting at the seams with material. I'm not afraid to go in a totally different direction because the thread is it's anchored by the thread of my life story. So I'm not afraid of that general line of the story being lost in any way. So I have a lot of freedom to go in so many different directions. Last night I changed my mind right before I went up because of the four people that had gone before me, and the tone of the stories and how they kind of touched into a deeper place in me that I wanted to capitalize on while I was in the room, because I knew I wasn't accessing that place in my own imagination by myself at home. So I gave myself that permission. It wasn't like asking the teacher if I could do it. I wasn't afraid at all. I was just really feeling in and making a choice and saying, this is what I'm going to do tonight. I'm really, really proud of that for myself, that I'm now able to make learning spaces work for me in where I want to grow and where I want to explore. It's not even like, what is my goal here? What do I want to learn? Because I never know what I can never state in the beginning what it is that I'm going to get out of it. I find that exercise to be like quite irritating and banal when people ask me that, because sometimes it's like the goal is to be in this process. The goal is to show up every week, to have other people showing up every week, and then to really be there and see what happens and see because otherwise I could, whip myself into showing up on my own in a desk every day, and I wouldn't need the room with the people in it. So it's different for everyone. Some people want to adhere to really strict goals, and I think this class is encouraging people not to. That there's the rough goal of a performance date, which a great thing that Charlie said was to sort of always have the next one after that lined up, so you're not throwing all your eggs in one basket. And that's so interesting because I already have my dates lined up for April for Monday Night Marsh. And then this class performance on March 11th is sort of a bonus. So I'm already like feeling so free and excited to see what happens on March 11th because I have the April dates lined up already. And then in April, the submissions for the next season are coming up. And there's also other opportunities that I'm looking at. So um, the second thing that I'm proud of is being able to, so the first thing is making these spaces my own. And the second is really being able to take in feedback, like take strong direction and have total permission to override it with my own intuition or decision. And that has taken such a long time to get out of that knee-jerk reaction that anyone standing in front of the room knows what they're talking about and it applies to me. And that none of those are true. That this person standing in front of the room is the person standing in front of the room. They're a person and they've had their experiences and they have what they're going to share. Some of it is going to be valuable to me and some of it is not. And I give myself permission not to force myself to just take everything that they say at face value. And I don't know, there's one of the themes I'm exploring from from the scene that I chose last night to work through, or that chose me. I didn't really know I was going to go there, but the scene of like that I keep going back to in my life, which is why was I already in college and still hadn't gone through a true rebellion where I could just say, fuck it, like no to my parents, that I had like a really, really strong pull to listen to them. And I was exploring that. It's not a simple answer. There's many, many layers within me and many, many layers within my parents that contribute to that. And that's a very interesting exploration. But and something that no one has taken an interest in until Charlie sort of like honed in on that moment and asked me to go deeper on each side. And I was like, wow, yes, there's a lot embedded in that one little moment, but no one's ever asked me before. And even in the therapeutic setting, it was sort of just wanting to get to a storyline and getting it arranged. Whereas somehow this is like, I'm feeling so much encouragement to say more rather than less. And so he gives strong direction because it's a catalyst to something, and I haven't yet had a strong no reaction, but it's like, oh wow, I haven't thought about it. Let me see what happens if I try that. And I'm really willing to try it again, just putting more footage on the cutting room floor, and to see where it goes and to see what it sparks. And it's so fun. I can totally get why this could be, if you're lucky enough to be Charlie or David, how this can become a life's work where it's like, wow, being with people as they go through a process. I shouldn't say taking people through a process, because it's really, there's not like next week you should do this. It's like, okay, what do you got? What's going to happen tonight? And we're totally in the moment. So it is all improv, but it's not like taught or presented in the context of comedy improv, or even like applying the principles of improv. It's still around like, we're creating a show, we're telling a story, we're finding a story, but really the principles of what do you got? What's happening now? And it, like, permission for everything. And let's go with what has energy. Let's follow the energy of aliveness. That just to see that in action, to see it in practice, to see someone totally committed to it and trusting it and doing intelligent work that can range the entire spectrum of emotions, and not just be about getting laughs and not just be about talking about trauma, but the entire range of human experience. That's so exciting. So I don't know how I got deep into that again. Since I think it's because I wanted to fill in the blanks because there was no audio on the video from yesterday. I did get an audio recording, which is on my website. It's a good recording. So if you're interested in the audio, apologize for the snafu again. Hopefully it works today. My other news is related to something I never talked about at the time because I had such shame about it. So I worked for REI for about 18 months back in 2011 and 12. And there's a whole story about that and what that meant to me and all the great people that I met and all the opportunities that blossomed from that when I just threw myself into it. And some things that I continue to do today, including volunteering at Yosemite every year, started from my time at REI. So I worked for REI, but I didn't tell anyone because I was so embarrassed to be an adult with my life experience and resume and all that, like going back to work in retail. There was and I think that whole judgment in my head came from my teenage experience of wanting to work in retail. I wanted to work. I mean, let's face it, the shopping mall is like a key piece of the American cultural vocabulary. And I wanted to work at the Gap, or I wanted to work as a barista in coffee shops. And Starbucks, I think, was just emerging like when I was in high school. It wasn't huge yet, but it was just starting. So I was like, I want to learn how to make coffee drinks. And it was so annoying to me because my parents were like, no, you don't need to go work at the mall. You can make more money for less time being a violin teacher. So I kept this kind of very, very small part-time job working as a violin teacher during the school years and then took a big schedule in the summers. And that was fun. But I still had this dream. I don't know why I wanted to work in a coffee bar and at the mall. I just wanted to. And I just felt like, what is the big deal? Like, why can't I just try it and see how I like it? And it really stayed with me as something that was just dismissed and I wasn't allowed to do. And I was gonna like hold on to that memory. And so when the opportunity came up, meaning having no clue what to do with my life, back in 2010, I was like, walking around the streets and festivals. And actually, I was training for Half Dome, and I had to go to REI for maybe the first time in my life to get a day pack for that trip. And I just noticed how friendly and engaging the employees were. And at that time, I was just so not used to people smiling spontaneously at me and wanting to be helpful in a genuine way and also wanting to share information about something I didn't know how to do, like essentially teach me voluntarily. And that's what all that was happening at REI. I was like, and I remember saying, wouldn't it be great to work here? And then like the next day I was at the farmer's market and they had a recruiting booth for the REI that was 10 minutes away from my house at the time. So it was scary to go and ask my friends to be references for me. I was very embarrassed, but I asked my friends to be references and they were called as part of the screening process. I got to the group interview. That whole interview process was fascinating. And then I got hired for that right before Christmas. And the other story I'll remember from that time is when we were in a huddle before the busiest day of the year at REI, which is their anniversary sale in May. And right before the doors opened on that first day, there's like a line already out the door. Our manager got us in a huddle, and I was ready to get like the speech about better not make any mistakes. This is a big deal. This is our biggest day of the year. I want everybody working hard. I want to see your A game. And what he said was, all right, guys, make sure you take your breaks. And I was like, oh my God, this is the busiest day of the year. And you're telling us to take our breaks. I have never heard that from a leader in a work environment, which at that time had been medicine, clinical rotations in hospitals, and in venture capital. It wasn't about taking breaks. It was about screwing over the next asshole. But I worked with good people, but they were just blatantly, like, unabashedly driven by preying on others' fear and greed. That was the mission statement. So that was shocking. It was also healing to just work with great people who actually genuinely not only wanted to support their coworkers, but did support their coworkers. Like when it was really busy, you call for help. You're encouraged to call for help, and people actually came and helped you as a coworker. And that was something that had never happened to me in any environment ever in my life. So that's a little sidebar to the fact that I just decided as part of my routine, because I'm really dedicating myself to daily writing, creative practice, and then just sort of all kinds of content generation like this, and then writing the show and coming up with proposals for future shows, that I want to put myself on a more time, like put more blocks of scheduled time into my life while doing something for others. And kind of filling in the gaps when I don't have as many individual coaching clients. So I decided to sign up as a Shipt shopper. And this is kind of a newer business. It was just acquired by Target, actually. And it's home delivery, personal shopping, basically, on demand through an app. And it is Um, Not available in my immediate neighborhood, so I do have to drive about 30 minutes to do the work, but it's actually great. Gets me, it's like a little adventure. I did my first shop today in the pouring rain. It was a small order. I just had to I wanted to know what it felt like. I wanted to do something lower pressure and just feel it out. And I had a great time. I got to be kind to people. I got to kind of move at my own pace, push, schedule myself and get the job done. I handled a mini crisis where I couldn't reach the customer about a substitution on a product that was not in stock, and then ended up calling support to just ask them what the best thing to do was. And it was all good. And I got to feel all of the things that came up. And I went at a time where the store wasn't crowded, so I wasn't stressed by that. And I got to, it felt like volunteering, like, hey, I get to do something. Like I had this little window that I decided I'm going to do something positive for someone else who has expressed that they already want this, right? They've ordered something and they want it delivered to their house. It's not like I have to go and like sell them on the idea of helping them, which is like what I realize is the real drain on marketing a helping service product business like coaching is like I'm constantly trying to convince people to pay me to help them with something that they don't even know they need help with, and that's pretty messed up. So it's like this opportunity to like just have some people identified that need something done, and then I just go do it, and it's very clean, and the payment is, they have a great system of having it on prepaid cards. And I also signed up for Instacart because they might be actually working in my immediate area. And was also a chance to notice that so many times when we evaluate whether we're going to do something, it's always about, we're steered toward like calculating the time and how much money we're going to get out of it, and then make some kind of value judgment based on these metrics that other people determine, like, is it worth it? And I think that's such an important question for each person now, with the number of options that we're faced with of how to live and how to put it all together. We're constantly asking, is this worth it? We're always making trade-offs about our time, our desires, and what we're willing to do to fulfill those desires, what we're willing to, what compromises we're willing to make, or what things we're willing to give up to have those desires met. And, this is not a full-time job for me, but it's sort of part of keeping the energy flowing in a creative life, is having time set aside for dedicated work and thinking about the work, and then other times set aside for moving the body and kind of being out in the world in some way. I don't live in a city. I live in a place where, I'm walking alone in nature, or I'm walking in a neighborhood that there aren't a lot of people walking in. And so that's the experience is like, okay, how do you find people to actually help, and then have it be clean, where, putting yourself there's, you could put out a want ad, like a Craigslist or Nextdoor type of ad, but there's also other ways. And so it's kind of interesting. I don't have to start a business. I don't, it's like I have spent so much energy in the last 10 years starting different businesses. And I feel like I've underestimated the cost of that, like the energy cost of that. And for the first time, I'm actually getting help with my business right now from someone across the country that I met in the summer. And it's really fun because there's a different energy when there's someone else waiting for the work to be given to them. It's almost like having this process of going to a class every week and there's somebody to hear my writing or my performing. It's totally different. And I never valued that before. I always only valued what would bring money in. And that's such a limited view. And I think that there's so many messages that we're receiving that are asking us to measure our activities and our time by just by how much money it's bringing in. And I know it speaks to, the number of people that whose wages for like the jobs that they have are not even enough to pay for the place that they live or the phones and the cars and all that. And that's a separate issue, but I think each of us actually has I keep preempting myself, right? Like saying, "Oh, there's people worse off." But I think my message is that every one of us has received a set of messages from society and our culture and our families and our um, upbringing and our life up to this point. And we continue to receive messages from marketers telling us how to think about things, and then we're hearing messages from our peers about how they value things, and none of those may be the answer for us as individuals. And if you want to call it courage, that does take courage to actually sort through and say, wow, for me at this time, this is why this works, or for me at this time, this is why that doesn't work. And what does it take to step back and actually sort that out and make a decision and say yes or no? Um, I think shame is a big part of it. I think getting over that shame is a big part of it. And then um, just letting go of the need to have to be like everyone around you or to compare yourself to others. And wow, is that a big one with social media? Um, so yes, I'm still enjoying my detox, week 2 of my detox from Instagram not being on my phone, and I really am not missing it. So sorry, Instagram peeps. I might have my new helper post some stuff on my behalf, but my life is much better. My brain is much better without those few hours a week or day. I don't even know how much time I was spending on that, but whatever the time is that I was spending on that, my life is better without it. Sorry. Um, so that's it. That's what I've got today, and I'm going to go back to some writing now.